This is every single monster type in The Witcher explained, starting with the most annoying ones, beasts. If you've played The Witcher 3 or any other game where you had to fight wolves in packs, you know the pain. Beasts are conventional animals that may attack you. Simple as that. Garden variety wolves, boars, and panthers. They tend to move around a lot and often attack in groups, though you'll usually find panthers chilling alone before they decide to harass you, sometimes in pairs. Beasts have a legendary reputation among the Witcher fandom for being particularly aggravating enemy types. They do a lot of damage, attack in groups, and you can hardly step 10 feet out into a forest without getting jumped. Wolves in the base game, boars, panthers, and the three little pigs in the expansions. We've also got beasts, who actually belong in other categories, but fell under this one, because Toussaint is Toussaint. There's only two, the Beast of Beauclair, a likable, terrifying vampire, and the Big Bad Wolf, a werewolf, but beasts are far from the most insane monster type on the list. Before we talk about crazier ones, though, we need to look at necrophages. Necrophages are by far the most common monsters we encounter, especially in The Witcher 3. The continent is absolutely ridden in conflict. Wars, banditry, cannibal attacks, wild animals, and monsters. These conflicts result in a lot of dead bodies, and that's where necrophages come in. You can find them in battlefields after the battle, graveyards, and even swamps and city sewers. Everywhere you might find human or non-human civilization, there's sure to be a necrophage lurking just behind the corner of your eye, waiting for you to die and get a natural marinade, aka rotting corpse, or give it the opening to put a permanent pause on your existence. Most necrophages love a dead snack and can smell it miles off, but be careful. They also like canceling people's life subscriptions so they can eat those too. From ghoul attacks in Velen to drowners snatching fishermen off their boats, they're a lot like Paperclip, but the goal is ex-living bodies. Now, there are several monsters that fall under the umbrella of necrophages. Ghouls and Al-Ghouls, which love attacking in numbers. Grave hags, water hags, or bog hags, who usually attack alone, but sometimes, in the case of water hags, will have drowner minions, or wights, and spotted wights, which are extremely rare. Spotted wights are officially extinct as of Blood and Wine, and even more dangerous, rotfiends, devourers, drowners, merknixers, drowned dead, foglets, graveers, and bulvors. Steel can work on them, but a silver sword and some necrophage oil is generally the best solution. Some of these guys a human can beat in a fight themselves if they're prepared and skilled enough, but the best solution is to hire a professional. Because necrophages will press the undo button on your life promptly if you even try. So be careful. Besides, if you fail to kill them and you both survive, you're likely to annoy them and make everything even worse. Remember, the world doesn't need heroes. It needs professionals, specters. Let's jump into the side of things that would scare the pants right off Shaggy and Scooby-Doo before they then die. Specters are no joke when they're not the usual nonsense of humans playing a Casper cosplay with a bedsheet, and the word spooky undersells how serious of a threat they can be in the Witcher universe. Specters walk on the bridge between life and death, between innocence and guilt. In less Kojimistic terms, most specters usually emerge from the aftermath of a person whose life account got frozen permanently. In most cases, the person either died terribly, or they had lingering desires, guilt, fury, or any other emotion that anchored them to the world. In those, you may find that wraiths, noon wraiths, night wraiths, umbras, and beanshais fall under that classification, and there are sometimes particularly unique and dangerous cases like the specters of Iris and Annabelle, as well as the Plague Maiden, the Red Miasmal, the Drag, Barghests, and the Draugr, who all manifest in moments of extremely intense sickness or hatred. Other specters prefer the guilt versus innocence interplay, but do note that most of those don't care about whether you're on either side. If you approach them, they will attack, and not to tickle. Penitents and hymns don't make that distinction, but usually their purpose is to punish the guilty for some horrible crime they committed. The penitent will haunt you, turn you into blender juice, and kill anyone trying to help, and the Him will latch onto you and cause extreme, long-lasting PTSD, increased blood pressure, and insanity. I mean, I can't exactly say this guy wouldn't sound out of place in Arkham Asylum with what the Him did to him. Relicts. If there's one thing Witchers don't like, it's unknowns. Unknowns are dangerous, deadly, and thus extremely terrible for a Witcher's safety. That is why even monsters that defy conventional classification still do need a classification. This is where relics come in. In this category, we have Leshens, Ancient Leshens, and Spriggans, which are basically Groot if he was evil and angry. Godlings, which are almost totally harmless and adorable. Fiends and Chorts, which are huge, aggressive, and nowhere near as adorable. The Caretaker, a creature that's really hard to describe as anything other than faceless, cheating discount Dark Souls boss. The Crones, a trio of intensely creepy creatures with can't really be described as women or witches, but can be recognized for their unique appearances, endless bloodlust, and the fact that they owe Ciri a medallion. Shaelmars, which are like a big, blind version of Ugly Sonic. Dopplers, who are medieval Skrulls. Sylvans, who are fat, surprisingly strong, and sometimes harmless. Sometimes, and special from Blood and Wine, the Wicked Witch. Relics are far from easy to fight, and even harder to classify as anything other than monsters in a league of their own. Vampires. Vampires are everywhere. For all I know, there might be a few vampires watching this video too. If that's the case, why not like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what Mr. Sapkowski got wrong and right about you bloodsuckers. I get the feeling we could have an interesting conversation. In The Witcher, vampires are particularly interesting, and most certainly a little overpowered for conventional people to fight. Vampires are divided into two subtypes, lesser vampires and higher vampires. Lesser vampires are straightforward, but bear with us on the higher vampires. Sometimes they can be a little confusing. Lesser vampires look like massive, ugly, overgrown wingless bats, and they are just as brutish and dangerous as they look. Some are plain old brutes, but others can go invisible, stalk you, and strike you from behind with claws sharper than Yennefer's tongue. We're talking Ekimmara, Fleeters, Proto-Fleeters, and Garkans. Big, fast, mean as a Taco Bell trip, and dangerous. Higher vampires, on the other hand, tend to look very much like humans, and even live among us, usually impossible to notice. Higher vampires are particularly intelligent, know how to speak to, lure, and stalk humans, and prefer to live in human society. Sometimes for the blood, sometimes to live like humans. For higher vampires, human blood isn't a mandatory food source, but more of a particularly pleasant glass of wine to sample from time to time. Or often, if you're an alcoholic like Regis used to be, or Gale from Oxenford. But wait, there's more. Higher vampires also have their own subtypes too. See, there are Alps, Bruxae, Catacans, and there are also higher vampires like Regis, Detloff, and the Unseen Elder. As for Oriana, well, whether she's a proper higher vampire or just an old Bruxa is unconfirmed. Higher vampires, the individuals, are a profound problem. They can shapeshift, not just from human to humanoid vampire, but also to unique, monstrous forms, like Detloff's winged form. But wait, there's more. They have special and unusual physiomagical abilities unique to each individual higher vampire, such as communicating with animals, summoning and coordinating lesser vampires to feast on Beauclair, running an orphanage, and if you're the Unseen Elder, summoning higher vampires to whichever place you want, anytime you want. To make things even worse, they're actually immortal and can't be killed by anything other than another higher vampire. If you're strong enough to kill one, they'll be back. Not fair, CDPR, not cool. Please nerf. You might be wondering how this works for a certain serial killer vampire in Novigrad. He's one of the few inconsistencies in vampire lore, since he's a higher vampire, except that meeting Geralt in battle did not end well for him. There are two possibilities with that one. Either he's not a proper higher vampire, but rather an old Catacan that figured out how to change into a human, and thinks he's an actual higher vampire, or he really is a higher vampire, and did not die after Geralt killed him. There are a lot of his notes scattered all over Novigrad even after he dies. Think about it. Is he really dead? The Witcher, ladies and gentlemen. Master of ambiguity. Insectoids. Arachnophobes, better look away. The Witcher games will not spare you the grisly sight like Grounded. In all their creepy, crawly menace, insectoids are tough, frighteningly fast, and they love their poisons. There are several different species of insectoids, which themselves fall into their own subspecies. We have Endriga, which have Endriga warriors, Endriga workers, Endriga drones, and Endriga queens. Then there are Arachasai, which are divided into young Arachasai, armored Arachasai, and venomous Arachasai. Next on the list, we have Kikimors, and from there, Kikimor workers, Kikimor warriors, and worst of all, Kikimor queens. Does it end there? Nope. We also have giant centipedes, pale widows, their stronger cousins, Koshchi, and frighteners. The last two we'll talk about shortly. You can open your eyes now, arachnophobes. Everything's safe. It wasn't easy and we'll be demanding coin for it, but we killed them with fire and insectoid oil. Moving on, we have mutants. I know what you're thinking. And no, this section is not necessarily referring to Witchers. Did you know that Witchers weren't the only mutated humans on the continent? Let's take things back to The Witcher 1. Spoiler warning for anyone that hasn't played The Witcher 1. One of the things that drove the main story in the game is that Kaer Morhen got attacked by a Redanian knight, order called the Order of the Flaming Rose. We won't go into details, but the end result was that, essentially, they managed to steal the Witcher's secrets and use them to create powerful mutants of their own, from both humans and animals. But the Order of the Flaming Rose aren't the only ones to have created mutants. Some others have too. Alzur and Cosimo Malaspina, both mages, created Witchers. So in this category, we'll exclude Witchers for fairly obvious reasons. We have armored hounds, mutants, mutant assassins, greater brothers, and greater mutants. All tough, all vulnerable to the steel sword. There are also mutated monsters that form part of this category. The games make references to the Vi of Maribor, a mutated giant centipede created by Alzur, which killed him and destroyed half the city of Maribor. Getting killed by your own monster. Ironic. We also have the Frightener, which was the reason the attack on Kaer Morhen was a huge success. A Parazeugl, which would be an absolute nightmare for Geralt. A Vigilosaur. A Koshchi, yet another mutated insectoid created by Alzur. What is with that guy? And mutated creatures. And an Hydra. Elementa. Oil your blades and be ready to pay a fortune to repair your sword, because Elementa are tough customers. Not only are they tough to fight, but since most of them are made of rock, smashing your silver sword against them makes it tough on the poor blade too. Elementa are straightforward. We have golems, earth elementals, fire elementals, ice elementals, hounds of the wild hunt, and gargoyles. All of them are made of rock, or ice in the case of ice elementals and the hounds. They don't speak in any language but ultraviolence, and they can absorb ludicrous amounts of damage before the Witcher's silver sword finally does enough damage to the magic keeping them together to end them. When you fight them, you won't be there for a good time, but you will be there for a long time. Longer if you become a corpse. Genie. The Witcher 1 put a hard separation between Elementa as we know them today and the formless elemental monsters known as Genie. While it's very likely that Genie would be classified under Elementa in The Witcher 3's Bestiary, we decided to give The Witcher 1 a little shout by giving the Genie their own category. There are 4 types for the 4 classic elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Let me guess, you were expecting a joke about everything changing when the Fire Nation invaded. For this category, we have Jinn, which represent wind or air, Ifrits, which represent fire, Dao, which represent earth, and Mirides of water. We only ever fight the Jinn and Ifrit though in The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 3. Cursed ones. Sad stories and terrible disasters in this world bring trauma, depression, grief, anger, and a whole lot of other negative emotions. In The Witcher, it's no different, but it's also much worse than that. In the Witcher universe, curses can arise from extremely strong negative emotions, or events erupting and interacting with the magic in the world, resulting in curses and monsters arising from curses. The monsters in question vary, and many of them rise from the ashes of terrible events, curses, misfortune, and other forms of disaster. We have werewolves, Ulfadin, Vorf, and Berserkers, which are all half man, half wolf, or half bear, and also half sons of Ubisoft glitches in a fight. Botchlings, which are some of the most depressing monsters, born from the fetus of a woman that miscarried. Archospores and Echinopsi, which manifest with curses, hatred, and also incur hatred because they're really annoying to fight. And the giant cursed toad in the Oxenfurt sewers, which was a total nightmare to fight, with or without superior golden oriole. How was your experience with the cursed toad boss? Let me know in the comments. Hybrids. If you know your basic Greek mythology, you'll love this one. Hybrids are monsters that can be described as essentially two species in one, part one thing, part another. So they're easy to understand, but of course not easy to fight. You have sirens, Lumia, and Echidna, essentially part human, part fish, or flying fish. The classic archetypes that lure you in with beautiful voices and pretty privilege, then show you their true face. No makeup, no orgies, plenty of sharp claws and teeth. Then we have griffins and archgriffins, part lion, part eagle, all dangerous. Of course, we can't forget the harpies, harpy queens, and Erinia, who are part woman, part bird, and most certainly dangerous as they attack you in groups and can be quite deadly if you don't have Igni or Ard handy. Ogroids, big, intimidating, deceptively quick, and extremely dangerous. I wish I could say we were talking about the mountain that rides, but nope, we're talking about Ogroids. The Witcher has its fair share of big men, but many of them would find themselves in serious trouble if they were to face up with these cheerful fellows. Ogroids are monsters that have a sort of humanoid but grotesque shape, and most of them are easily identified due to their size, a strength that no Witcher could hope to match, even with extra overpowered mutations, and the tendency to show off their bad breath by roaring all the time. Ugh, these guys are in desperate need of an Aquafresh sponsorship. So, for these guys, we have rock trolls, ice trolls, cyclops, and ice giants. There's also a smaller, weaker species of Ogroid that makes up for that weakness with numbers. That's right, Neckers and Necker warriors, whose blows are laughably easy to parry, but will swarm you and gegenpress you into the afterlife, like gamers wish they could to console and GPU scalpers. Those guys are a total pain in the butt. The Neckers, not the scalpers, although they are a pain too. The way they'll act up when the PS6 and Nextbox finally releases should be an arrestable offense. Draconids. Dragons are cool. They are probably one of the most famous mythological creatures in the world. The Witcher has dragons, and dragons are the most famous species of draconids, which aren't all dragons. Aren't all as cool or intelligent as dragons, but definitely do pack a punch. People in The Witcher also have good taste, because they rave about dragons as much as we do, but they also like to point at any flying lizard and think it's a dragon. Most draconids share many common characteristics with dragons, but it's important to know they are not dragons, which Witchers generally avoid taking contracts on, and they can be a serious threat to human life. Most of them don't breathe fire, but they do fly, so the untrained eye can mistake them for a dragon from a distance. Aside from the dragons, in the Draconid class we've got Forktails, who love to show off their kung fu kicks and twerking skills. Wyverns, who almost look cure, almost, royal wyverns which are surprisingly big, and slizzards, which can actually breathe fire, and cockatrices and basilisks, who have a mean bite. Unclassified. Here's where things get a little tricky. The Witcher 1 did have a monster classification system of sorts, but it wasn't consistent across all monsters, and it wasn't designed like The Witcher 2 and 3's bestiary. That being said, some monsters are easier to classify than others, but for the few monsters that don't have any solid classification, I can name and class them. For starters, we have the Bloodzuger. It hangs out in the swamps alongside drowners, and it also does fall under Necrophage class in The Witcher, Monster Slayer. More than likely, it should be a Necrophage. The Striga also remains unclassified. A Striga is a woman transformed through a curse into a particularly powerful, nocturnal ghoul-like monster. She hunts in the full moon, and no human would survive a conventional battle with one. A Witcher can kill one if necessary, but the curse is undoable. It just takes the whole night. She could be a cursed one, most likely. Lastly, we have Dagon, unclassified, but then again, he's not a monster. He's a god. It's not him you can kill, because no conventional methods can kill him, but rather his worshippers, a relic at best. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on screen now.